everyone, and welcome back to Art a la Carte. Do you find yourself in an artistic slump? Can't figure out what to paint? Every time you put your pencil to the paper, nothing comes out? May I recommend this recipe for either disaster or awesome success? And that's, don't just try one art medium when you can have them all. You guys, I love working with mixed media, taking as many different art supplies that I have and mashing them together to create a wildly crazy piece of artwork. I can't even tell you everything that I use to create this piece of artwork, but I will tell you to keep one thing in mind. When you are testing out different art mediums together and you're not sure how they're going to work, it may backfire on you. It may not turn out, and that is okay. That's part of the learning process. It's how you get to know what art does. Some people, when they teach art, want you to use it in a specific way. This is how you use watercolor. This is how you use oils. This is how you use color pencils. For me, I threw all those rules out the window and said, let's all be one happy family and play together. And I have found that there are certain art supplies that do not like to play together, and bad, scary art things happen. But you move on, you keep going, you never give up. So let me try to name off some of the art supplies that I used in here. So one, I started off with a really good heavy-duty paper. It's a watercolor paper, I think 140-pound weight. So it's really thick. It can take a lot of work. You can put a lot of stuff onto it before it starts breaking down. And that's important to know the type of paper. The paper I kind of think is like the foundation of a house. It's the foundation of your artwork. So you want to make sure you have the right foundation for the work you're going to do. Watercolor paper or mixed media paper is good because it's really thick and durable. It holds up pretty well. I started off with just a basic little sketch and a generic idea of what I wanted. I wanted a mermaid picture. Because I love mermaids. I didn't get enough of them during Mermaid. I'm still painting and creating them because I love to do that. Normally after I put in a sketch, then I go back in and ink the sketch in. But this time I decided to be a little bit more daring, a little bit different. And so began to go in by just applying the paint to the paper. Now the only downside with taking and applying watercolor paper right over your pencil is sometimes that will seal your pencil in there. So if you don't want to see the sketch marks underneath, you may want to lighten up your lines or clean up the sketch a little bit. But for me, I kind of wanted that sketchy look to show through. In the end, I put so much art medium on here that you really can't see the original sketch. But just heads up on that, if you're using watercolor over top of your pencils, they're probably going to show through. Now with the watercolor itself, I had a lot of fun with that. I laid down a lot of water and then added in different colors in different areas. So it wasn't like her hair was solid purple. You'll notice that there are some purples and pinks and a little bit of blues mixing in there. And that's the fun with watercolor. Likes to blend and create these really fabulous gradients of color. You'll also notice I go in with a paper tissue and dab at the color, pulling that up, and that can be fun too. A thing to remember is when you're dabbing, just touch the tissue to the paper, don't rub it. Then when the paper gets wet, it becomes a little bit more fragile, and the more you cause friction to it, the more it's going to eat the paper up and damage it, and the paper will begin to roll on itself and kind of turn into those little pills of paper. That's not always the best thing. I wanted to keep the colors really light and loose and flowing before I went back in with an ink pen to kind of crisp up the outline. The next thing I did is went back in with some distress ink, which is actually more for crafters, scrapbookers, to stain your paper. This product is a little bit on the crazy side. It really absorbs into the paper, but using this supply was probably the point that I thought, I might be ruining this piece forever. But in the end, I didn't care and kept going with it, and it turned out pretty good. So I layered colors in and dabbed it off with tissues and layered in more colors until I finally got a look that I liked, and then I wanted to move into the inking process. Now this is the part in your art creation that you might need to take and pause. If you have a really wet piece of paper and you want to go back in and ink it, you might want to let it dry. Now here's an art tip for you. For those of you who put a lot of water on your paper, you're going to notice it's going to warp and kind of edges are going to curl up on you. If you take your picture, as long as it's not sopping wet, but it's damp to the touch, and I sandwich it in between two pieces of like paper towel or something, and then put like a heavy book on top of it. Let it sit for half an hour, and then come back to it. what will happen is the excess water is absorbed into the paper towel, and it's going to help flatten your piece out. Once the paper is really nicely dried, then I began to go back in with some ink pens. I decided not to use just one color of ink. I used actually several color ink pens. I used a blue, a magenta, a wine color, a green, a brown. I used them all. And I didn't stop there. Once I finished the inking in, I went back in with some metallic gel pens. If you're wanting more information on specifically what brand of art supplies I use, I will leave links to those in the description box of this video. You can check them out, read up on them. It was a fun break from the planned and scheduled pieces that I'm working on. One being the illustration for the next part of the story that I'm telling on Wednesday, which if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link to that in the description box below. Definitely check that out. It's a adventure story that you guys are helping me to write. You guys get to vote on what happens next in the story. So part 2 is coming up on Wednesday. You want to check that out. If you're brand new to my channel and you don't want to miss out on that video, hit that subscribe button and that little bell icon. That way you'll get notifications every time I upload a new video. Hopefully this helps you if you're in an artist slump and don't know what to create. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out with me. And until next time, God bless you guys, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye-bye.